Hi folks, it's Coach Kelvin here from the We Run Virtual Run Club and We Run Coach for Leeds and surrounding areas as well as online coaching. In this little video I'd like to share some thoughts on the nutrition that I used in a race yesterday. It's a little bit of a follow-up from the last two videos that I've done. I thought it might be a good idea to use a practical example. Because one thing that I did do yesterday is I tried to keep things really simple. And to add a little bit more context, the race was 3 hours, and I held around kind of 165 heart rate for most of the race, give or take a little bit, because it was one big climb and one big descent. And I'm going to say it was kind of around what I'm capable of doing at the moment, so it was quite a hard effort. And so during the course of that, I kept my nutrition really simple, with 90 grams of carbohydrate an hour, and 1200 milligrams of sodium per litre of water and 2 litres of water throughout the course of 3 hours. And to keep it really simple, I use a powdered form carbohydrate that's also got the sodium and electrolytes in there, Tailwind. So that gave me 50 grams of carbohydrate per hour. And Tailwind has dextrose and sucrose as the sugars. This is the kind of aim of this video, is to go into why I use sports products rather than real food. And sucrose is actually glucose and fructose together. Sucrose is kind of table sugar almost. And then I used the Gel 100 from Morton, which is 40 grams of carbohydrate, which is about double what you'd get in a sort of standard SIS gel. But it's in a real sort of jelly format, so I was squeezing about a third of it out every 20 minutes and then just tucking it back in my pack. And the Morton gels have glucose and fructose in there, so basically I was taking on board dextrose, glucose and fructose, so 3 different types of sugar. And what the sort of sports nutrition brands try to do is to get the maximum amount of absorption. So you want very, very simple sugars. You don't want complex carbohydrates. So, starchy things like kind of potatoes and rice and pasta, they digest too slowly whilst you're racing. They're definitely how we want to bring on board our carbohydrates in day-to-day life to stop those big glucose spikes, but not in races. And this is how I look at it. If you think of the intestine lining as having lots of little windows, and they're pathways for different types of sugar. So fructose has its own pathway, dextrose has its own pathway, and glucose has its own pathway. And as mentioned a second ago, the sports brands try to maximize the absorption of these sugars. So if you ended up using something maybe that wasn't a sports brand, that was just predominantly dextrose, that might come in the form of some sort of sweets or something like that you eat, you're only utilizing one of those pathways, so you could be getting maybe up to 2 to 3 times as much absorption of sugars if there was different sugars in that product. So I hope that makes some sort of sense. And a lot of people try to race with what they call real food, like potatoes, pasta, rice balls, and things like that. But my advice, particularly for even longer distance races, your body's primary fuel source is carbohydrate. And we want to be able to absorb as much as possible. Otherwise we end up with too much bulk in our stomach. An example would be if we try to fuel with like rice balls, we just have to eat so much to try get the absorption. It just wouldn't really work. So all I had to do really, I started the race with my 2 half litre bottles. Both of those had my Tailwind, and I knew that then every 20 minutes I just needed to have a third of my Morton gels. And I managed to get on board 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour. In the last half an hour, it was more of a struggle to get it down. One, because it was quite a fast downhill, so you get that kind of oscillation of the stomach. And I also, I started to feel just a little bit sicky towards the end, which is a good sign. After taking on board so much kind of carbohydrate, 3 different sorts of sugars, but I didn't feel too sick, so it was a sign that hopefully I got that about right. And you might want to use the products that you're going to use on the race, maybe in your last kind of main training block. But it can be quite expensive using sports products. So what I do is I use other things with similar, doesn't have to be exactly the same, sugars for like most of my longer runs. And then when it comes into my sort of peak training block, I might be doing like a race specific workout, maybe even every other week, and then I'll use exactly what I'm going to do on the race. So I hope that makes some sort of sense, and if you've got any thoughts or questions, please just pop them in the comments below. And for now, happy running.